Pride and Prejudice, chapter 3, third video. So I ended my video asking you, why do you think he ought to be settled in Netherfield? Because if he's not settled there, he won't have the opportunity to meet the girls. Lady Lucas quieted her fears a little by starting the idea of his being gone to London only to get a large party for the ball. Remember, party here is group of people, right? Remember, you can go to the restaurant and then, I don't know, there will be a receptionist there, or I think there's another name for receptionist that I'm forgetting at the restaurant. There is the maitre d', maybe? Okay, but the receptionist may ask you, how many in your party, sir? So how many in your party, sir? And then you say 5, so she gets a table for 5. So that's the idea. So the Lady Lucas quieted her fears a little by starting the idea of his being gone to London only to get a large party for the ball, because there was going to be a ball, so that's why he went to London. And a report soon followed that Mr. Bingley was to bring 12 ladies and 7 gentlemen with him to the assembly. The girls grieved over such a number of ladies. They were upset, they were sad, they cried over, right? But were comforted the day before the ball by hearing that instead of 12, he had brought only 6 with him from London, his 5 sisters and a cousin. And when the party entered the assembly room, the group of people with him, it consisted only 5 altogether. Mr. Bingley, his 2 sisters, the husband of the eldest, of the sister, and another young man. Mr. Bingley was good-looking and gentlemanlike. He had a pleasant countenance. Let me give you this word right away. Countenance is a person's facial expression, or a person's face. In our Quizlet there, I put several faces of the same girl, She's laughing, smiling, impressed, things like that. So he had a pleasant countenance and easy, unaffected manners. I really think it's interesting to find out that he has unaffected manners. Can you pause the video and explain to yourself or to me there? What do you understand by unaffected manners? It's like unaffected by what? Answer. That's not the point. It's not this affected. Affected manners would be manners that would look artificial, Why? Because they didn't come as, involuntary action, Imagine like a bad actor, A bad actor has affected manners, right? It's too much, it doesn't flow, So I want to show that I'm impressed by what you did. And they say, oh my God, this is so impressive. It didn't come from the heart, all right? But he had unaffected manners, right? So his manners were very, let's say, flow-like. His sisters were fine women with an air of this decided fashion. His brother-in-law, Mr. Hurst, merely looked the gentleman, but his friend, Mr. Darcy, soon drew the attention of the room by his fine, tall, handsome features. Handsome features, noble mien, right? Let me give you the definition for mien. Mien here is air, manner, appearance, expression. Okay, so he had handsome features and noble mien. In the report, which was in general circulation within 5 minutes after his entrance, of his having 10,000 a year. Okay, first of all, it's interesting to understand that just 5 minutes after he got to the party, there was already a rumor, saying how. I don't know. I have to ask you the question. There was this rumor about him. What does it mean? 10,000. Answer. Keep in mind, we came across this expression already when we got the first news about Mr. Bingley, right? We know that Mr. Bingley is a man of 4,000 a year, okay? That was his income. Now, Mr. Darcy is much richer, right? More than double than Mr. Bingley. Okay, so that's the 10,000, right? So, again, in the report, which was in general circulation within 5 minutes after his entrance, of his having 10,000 a year. The gentleman pronounced him to be a fine figure of a man. Keep in mind here, pronounce is like declare, say, right? When people are getting married, in the end of the ceremony, the priest there says, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Okay? I now declare that you are husband and wife. The gentleman pronounced him to be a fine figure of a man. The ladies declared he was much handsomer than handsome. It's interesting. It's a kind of rare, this comparative form, handsomer. We would usually prefer more handsome. So it sounds a little old. The ladies declared he was much handsomer than Mr. Bingley, and he was looked at with great admiration for about half the evening, till his manners gave a disgust which turned the side of his popularity. For he was discovered to be proud, to be above his company, and above being pleased, and not all his large estate in Derbyshire. I looked for the pronunciation of that, and there are different pronunciations, but by my research, Derbyshire, is the most popular one, instead of Derbyshire. So it's Derbyshire. Well, so his large estate in Derbyshire could then save him from having the most forbidding, unfriendly here, okay? The most forbidding, disagreeable countenance, and being unworthy to be compared with his friend. I believe countenance is different, right? I put it in our list here. And we already saw in this video, right? So the facial expressions, right? And remember, forbidding is unfriendly, so throughout the second part of the evening, people would look at him with unfriendly faces, even though he had such a fortune, right? Mr. Bingley had soon made himself acquainted with all the principal people in the room. He was lively and unreserved, danced every dance, was angry that the ball closed so early, and talked of giving one himself at Netherfield. Such amiable qualities must speak for themselves. So keep in mind, amiable. I put in my. If you analyze the word, it's very similar to Portuguese, right? Like friendly, right? And I put there in our list two cute bears hugging each other. So they are amiable. But keep in mind, even though the word for us quite normal, in English not so much. And remember our rule of thumb. I think I've mentioned in one of our classes, right? Words that have Latin origin, they have this huge tendency of sounding more formal. Okay, they sound more formal than words that come from Germanic. How do I know they came from Latin? Because they sound like our word, right? We have the word amável in Portuguese, and then we have amiable, which is pretty close. One more example, we have the word sufficient in English, and it's pretty close to our suficiente, right? And then we have the word enough that has nothing to do with our words, right? And then we have the word, let me get another one. Force, that is pretty close to força. And we have strength, that is pretty different. So you'll see that the first ones are Latin, okay, words. They came from Latin, or from French, but French came from Latin. So in the end, it came from Latin. And the other words from Germanic. Please don't confuse Germanic with German. Okay, Germanic is the mother tongue. Is the mother tongue of German, of English, Norwegian, Dutch, languages like those. Okay. So such amiable quality must speak for themselves. What a contrast between him and his friend. Mr. Darcy danced only once with Mrs. Hurst. Remember, Mr. Hurst was one at the guy was there, right? At his party. And once with Miss Bingley. So she is Mr. Bingley's sister. So he danced just with people in his group. Declined being introduced to any other lady, and he spent the rest of the evening in walking about the room, speaking occasionally to one of his own party again. He doesn't speak to people outside his party. His character was decided. He was the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world, and everybody hoped that he would never come there again. Amongst is just a more formal way of saying among, okay? In the middle of. Amongst the most violent against him was Mrs. Bennet, who disliked of his general behavior, was sharpened into particular resentment by his having slighted one of his daughter. Okay, so again, her dislike of his general behavior was sharpened into particular resentment. It was just dislike as everybody at the party, but her dislike was sharpened. It was made more resentful, let's call it this way, because he slighted one of her daughters. Remember, slight, I don't think I put in our list. I did. Treated with little importance, like excluded. I put a bunch of black ducks, they're just walking, and then there's a poor yellow duck who cannot walk with the other because the black ducks are sliding the poor yellow duck. So we have just discovered now that this new guy, Mr. Darcy, has slighted one of the Bennet girls, right? One of them. So let's see what happened.